Sportageous. Sport gets smarter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sportageous Videocast. Today, I have a very, very exciting guest with me on the show. Alison Forman played for the Matildas in over 75 games, including the 95 and 99 FIFA Women's World Cups and the 2000 Summer Olympics. Alison now works for the Dana Cup in Hjorring, Denmark, one of the world's largest football tournaments. Welcome to the show, Alison.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Really, really excited to start talking. So let's get straight into it. I wanted to ask you first and foremost, how much, in your opinion, has football in Australia on a general, very holistic level changed from when you played the game for the country?
Oh, it's huge. I remember when I started playing football, I started actually late. I was only 16 years old when I started playing at the school level and then went to club level. I played with the boys to start with because we didn't have any women's teams or girls teams to play for. So the change is immense. And at the national team level, it's even more huge. I'm happy to be a pioneer with the Matildas when I started, and seeing the changes today is just amazing. I mean, the team is a completely different team from when we started, and it's all good. It's all positive for the women's game at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I think, there's a congratulations in order. We were all celebrating in Australia. The 2023 Women's FIFA World Cup is obviously coming to Australia and New Zealand. What was it like hearing that news and, of course, being so far away?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I could have been in Australia. I don't think it mattered where I was. I mean, the news that we got the World Cup was absolutely amazing, because the World Cup it's a pinnacle for a football player. So actually having it in Australia on home soil is going to be fantastic. Not just the event itself, but also the time leading up to the games, to the World Cup, and then after. I mean, it's gonna change the football, and it's gonna change women's football in Australia completely. So it's good times on the coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen so much in the build-up for the bid itself. One of the most amazing things that we've seen in Australia is that the Matildas are now paid the same as the Socceroos, about time.
Yeah.
You touched on the idea of it impacting the game so significantly, and in particular the women's game. Can you expand a little bit about that? What exactly do you mean? That, as in, what will this lead to?
I think it will lead to more sponsorship within the women's game, more companies, opening their eyes and seeing the potential of the women's game, because it is actually huge. And I think the women's game compared to the men, it's really exciting because the women are more available, I believe, as far as sporting persons go. You get to see the personalities and the people. Truly as themselves as footballers. I think the men's game has become so professional that it's a little different. I think the women's game is very attractive for advertisers at this time. And also I think, the promotion of the game in Australia is going to be huge, having the World Cup. You're going to get female players as role models. The young players within Australia will see, and it's not just girls, it will also be the boys as well. They'll see these players on the field and they'll be inspired to be a part of the game. And at the same time, it's not also about just being a professional player. You will see players just wanting to play the game for fun. And that kind of is what I get inspired about at today. I was a professional footballer, played for my country, played professionally for Junior Hjorring, but today I work for an international youth soccer tournament. And we have players that are amateur players that come and play football, and that's also just important. You're being a part of the game. Also, not you're not everyone's going to be a professional footballer, even though they want to and they dream about it. And I think the possibilities are going to be huge within Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with the experience that you obviously have in that space within youth participation within football and sort of going to that grassroots level and having players come out and playing the game. How do you see, what do you see as the current state of that participation level in Australia, and how does that tie in with obviously the World Cup not too far away now?
Yeah, like I'm obviously probably not 100% updated within the, like football at the grassroots level in Australia, but I think it's about just getting the kids out playing, on the field, and remembering what football is all about. Football is about a beautiful game with a round ball. That's all it is. At the end of the day, the percentage of players that become pro players and play in the top leagues around the world, it's very small. So you have to also remember, as long as there's professional football, but there's also amateur football, and that is where you will pluck the pro players from, that pool of players. Sorry about my English. I sometimes forget a little. But that's the pool where you'll pick the professional players. So you need a huge amount of amateur players to find the professional players for the future. So it's
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also obviously, we are living in one of the most challenging and unprecedented times for every aspect of life, not just sport, but in the context of sport. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of debate on a lot of the good work that has been done in sort of pushing women's sport, growing it, developing it, cultivating it, coming undone because of obviously the pandemic. And what are your thoughts, I guess, first on statements like that? And do you think that there's definitely more challenges ahead? And then I'll come on to another question in that regard as well.
there is perhaps challenges with it, but I think it's I look at it like it's an opportunity to actually change the way people see women's sports and women in sport. So I think I don't look at it as though it's a problem. I think COVID-19 has opened up for the possibilities to reopening and giving a rebirth to the women's game. Women around the world, I'm so excited because today you see women's sport everywhere. You see people speaking out about the women's game, people writing about the women's game. We're out there. We want our share of publicity in all ways. So I think it's a perfect timing for the rebirth of women's sports.
Yeah, I like the optimistic note there, and I think that that's also very important to consider and take into context with everything happening, because obviously you often there is the negativity which needs to be addressed, but on the flip side, there is this, I guess, as you've mentioned, this avenue of possibilities that can emerge from this. I want to, I guess, take it back a little bit and talk to you about your experiences in having played for the Matildas in two World Cups, and then talking a little bit about how different that will be for the Matildas in 2023. There's obviously much, like we've already talked about, a lot more fanfare, a lot more engagement, sponsorship, and broadcasting and coverage and so on. So I'd like to hear a little bit about obviously your own experience and then coming to the future.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, for us as players, I think when you're a football player, all you are is about your training and about the game. That's what our lives are around, because today I sit and I think, I wish I had maybe paid more notice to the countries that we played in, to the culture and stuff. But when you're young and you're playing the game, you don't have time for that. So I think everything is the same. Football is going to be the same, but obviously there's more publicity, there's more people in the crowds, watching you. I think so. and especially being at home, playing at home in front of your home crowd is going to be huge. I remember at the Olympics in 2000, it's a different feeling. You just, you have the support out in the stands and people are cheering you on. And I don't think it will be an added pressure to the players because they're so professional these days. It's just going to be, they're going to, like, the crowd will just help them go even further and play better on the field. So I think, the football's football. It doesn't matter if you're playing in your backyard in front of yourself or your best friend, or you're playing in front of thousands of people. The game's the same for us as a player.
Oh, absolutely. Personally, I'm a huge fan, but generally I think that there still is this perception here in Australia that that football isn't necessarily like rugby or the AFL, which are obviously sort of the pinnacles along with cricket here in Australia.
Yeah.
Do you,
Yeah.
being in Denmark, where football is the game,
Yeah.
do you think that's changed since you used to play? And yeah, in terms of what people perceive of the game here in Australia, what you hear, what you understand about that?
Yeah, I think it's changed from before. The problem that Australia has, it's because of the weather, and it's because of all the different sporting codes that we have. Like I grew up riding horses, playing tennis. That's what I was going to do, and then I found football. And it's just, there's so many alternative sports within Australia that you can play. And obviously, rugby league and rugby union and these male sports took over the sporting codes within Australia. So, but I think it's changing. Football is a world game. Like everybody plays football all around the world, and it's the number one sport in the world. So I think it is changing in Australia, definitely.
And I guess, how would you compare the women's game in particular, but to here in Australia, to that in Denmark?
I think the women's league in Australia has been exciting to watch because they get a lot of the foreign players that are on a break over here. They come down to Australia and play the league. So I think the level is good. Denmark is like, it's you grow up with football. The players, they start when they're like 3, 4, 5 years old and go up through the cycle. And it's, we have like maybe football, badminton, stuff like this, but there's not a lot of sports that you have to compete with. So I think sorry. I forgot your question.
So I was just asking about the differences in the game there and the game in Australia, particularly in the context of women's football.
Yeah, I don't think there's many differences at all. I mean, I think it's probably a little bit more physical, a little bit more tactical, maybe, if you think like straight out football. But definitely, the Australian League is getting up to par, if not even on the same level at this time.
Yeah, right. And we've, since the announcement, obviously, and the winning of the bid, we've seen so many Matildas sign up with English teams to play. And how do you think that's going to perhaps assist or help them gain experience and improve in preparation for the tournament?
Yeah, I think it would be good. Like myself, I went overseas in '92 because you want to play like a whole season. You want football to be your life. So I understand that the girls are doing it, and I also understand the people that say, "Well, let them stay at home." But I mean, the league and in Australia at the moment is not long enough, and it's not hard enough at this time. If they change it, yeah, good. It'll be good. But I think it'll definitely be a bonus for the players. Coming to England, we have India Riley from Australia's just signed for Fortuna, our club here in Denmark. There's lots of players in Norway. So they'll get to play and train football 24/7, and it will definitely change them as players. Definitely.
And I guess, to sort of take it out of the context of Australia, when we when you've spoken about how much the women's game is growing and women's sport in general is growing
Mm.
globally. But when we look at it from the perspective of mainstream media reporting on women's sport, Australia is far better than the global average, which is at about 12% of mainstream sports media reporting is on
Yep.
women's sport, whereas the global average is 4,
Mm.
uh, which is ridiculous.
Mm.
But for our, I guess, viewers, I wanted a bit of your insight on what it's like for women's sport, and in particular, of course, women's football in Europe, just so we can sort of gauge how we have it here relative to, other parts of the world.
Yeah, like I think Australian football is doing really well. Like I follow the social media and stuff, and I think it's fantastic the amount of media that there is. Europe is, like football's always been in Europe. It's always been there, and it hasn't had that much media, but now it's changing, and I think it's just, in connection with what is happening within the world. Women are getting a voice all around the world. We want to play our sports. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. And times are changing. People are taking a fight to get the media and to get the coverage. So I think it's raising. There's a lot of media for the women's game in Europe, and it's just getting higher level.
Oh, absolutely. I bet, and it's great to see. Alison, I wanted to move on to a little bit about your own career and your story. Like you've said, the athletes and the footballers today get to play countless hours training. They have, nutritionists, psychologists, physiotherapists. What was it like when you were playing, in terms of all these added facilities and the likes?
Yeah, like in the start, it was so totally not like that. We went to training, or we went to a training camp, and we ran around a bit, played a little bit of football. So it wasn't like that at all. But when I went to Denmark, it was completely different. Like they had like a more professional setup. We had physio, we had masseurs, we had all that. And then on the national team in Australia, it grew over the years that I was on the team from 89 to 2002. So from that span, there was like a huge difference. Also up to the Olympics in 2000, when we stayed at the Australian Institute of Sport. That was when I actually felt, like we're doing it. We're like totally professional, and it was like football 24/7. So amazing differences and a lot of differences. But I think, I was lucky that I went to Denmark and had a change maybe earlier than the people that were back in Australia. So I'm very grateful for that. So I can just imagine today how the girls have it, and must be amazing to have, that support, because it just makes girls need that support to actually, show what they can on the field. The men's game and the boys have had that all their lives, and we've always been, pushed down. But now with that support, you're seeing a totally different women's game on the field, totally different.
Oh yeah, and it's really interesting that obviously you were part of it, part of seeing a bit of that transition as well. And
Yeah.
to now gauge, we as fans and people in the media get to see the sort of support structures that are in place. Your career ends. Now I want to sort of talk to you a little bit about the Dana Cup. How do you find yourself involved with the Dana Cup? How does that happen?
Well, like when I went to Denmark and started playing for Fortuna Hjorring, then I started working basically straight away for the Dana Cup tournament, because it's organized. Dana Cup is organized by Fortuna. And I just started as a volunteer to start with, doing translations and talking to the English speaking teams, which we have a lot of. So it was just natural. And then I went to school in Denmark, and then I started working like full time for the Dana Cup, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And I love it. Like we have 1,000 youth soccer teams from 45 countries that come in to play football in 1 week in Denmark, and it's absolutely amazing, and it's mind blowing for people if they don't. They can read about our tournament, and if they haven't played in the tournament, they just don't understand. Like we have around 2,500 games within a week with 30,000 kids. It's like, it's crazy. But I love it. Like I love being able to give back to the game. I was never going to coach. I knew that it wasn't something that I was interested in. So for me, being a part of the Dana Cup and giving back to the youth players, where they actually get to, like I say, not everyone's going to be a pro player. So these kids, they get to experience maybe a little World Cup or a little Olympics. But we have far many more teams than what the Olympics and the World Cup have. So I love it. I love my job. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for the viewers, if you want to read a little bit about the Dana Cup, we do have a feature piece with them on our website. So you can head over to sportageous.co and check it out. It's a fascinating tournament. And Alison, I did want to ask, in that context, what, having been involved for so long with the Dana Cup, what does it mean for the children and the young athletes who come from all around the world, like you said, to play, to participate? Because it's more than just the games, it's the experience and everything else. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like the cultural experience for the players, it's huge. Like we get every year after the tournament, we get people writing to us and they say, "Oh, I met this guy, and then I met this girl, and I don't know what their team name was." And it's like, we're not going to find them within the 30,000 kids, But the friendships that are made, it's not just the football. They come in and they play football. They get to compete against other teams from all around the world. It's different styles, Brazil, Mexican, from Ukraine or whatever, like different styles of play and all that. So there's the football aspect, and they challenge themselves, and being on the road with your teammates, like you can't beat that. Like I was on the road with the Matildas for years, and every time we went away, it was exciting. It was something special. You're hanging out with your friends, and that's what our tournament's all about. They have 5 days where they play games together. And then in between games, we have like an event area where they socialize and they meet friends, and they'll make pen pals. They'll write to each other for like years. And our tournament is also we have about 75% of the teams that are return teams, that they come back the next year. So we have so many families that there's a father that played in the Dana Cup, and then he became a coach, and then he sent his team, and then he has kids and he sends his kids, and the cycle just goes on, and it's absolutely amazing. And like the experience for the players, it's just huge. Like I know myself being at a World Cup and at an Olympics, how it was, and then I imagine at our tournament with 1,000 teams and 30,000 people, it's like, for them, it's just huge. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I have to say, I can't possibly imagine being on a field in front of 30,000 people. So to the kids, absolute kudos to them for being able
It's
to do that. And
you have to come and visit, and
absolutely,
then you'll understand.
yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
Look, Alison, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the show today. And again, to the listeners, if you want to hear more about or read more about the Dana Cup, just head on down in this link, and you will down on the YouTube video, and you'll find the link right there. Thank you once again, Alison, and hoping to see more successes out of the Dana Cup and also with the Matildas.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.